In this video, we're going to see what happens if you spin a triangle. Hey, I'm James, and this is another one of my metal spinning videos. If you've seen any of the other ones, you know I'm kind of involved in a little mini series of shaped spinnings where I start with a blank that isn't a circle and seeing what happens as you spin it and leaving that edge of whatever shape it is that you're working from. So in this video, we're going to work with a triangle, and you could obviously work with any triangle you want to just see what those different shapes are like. In this case, I worked with just a smaller equilateral triangle, and we sort of ended up with this little guy here. And I think there's lots of possibilities of what you could do with kind of those outer pointy flanges, or you could radius them off a little bit or something like that. So I'll go over that. Before actually getting into the spinning, I wanted to talk a little bit about layout. I was really fortunate to have an amazing geometry teacher in high school that we had a little lesson on practical geometry and laying things out. But in teaching art all these years, I've realized that not a lot of people had that. So I really love books like this. John Allen's Drawing Geometry is a great one that just gives you tips on how to lay out most forms, even just with a divider or a compass. And that can be super helpful in the studio. So what I did here, you can see the inscribed triangle inside of the circle. And I just used my dividers, drew the size circle that I wanted for the outermost points of the triangle, drew my circle, and then I used the divider to just evenly walk out the divisions of the circle. So that way you know it's 3 even arcs through the circle, and you can sort of walk that divider around, and you have to kind of futz with it and play with it a little bit to get exactly to land back where it started from. But that's how I made those marks, and then just connected that. Once I then cut out the triangle, I wanted to mark the center of the triangle because once you place it on the lathe, you really can't shift it. And so if you want it to be centered, it's important to mark that. And so what I did is I just took a right angle square and laid that up against each side of the equilateral triangle. And that's how I marked those perpendicular lines to the edge, and then they converge right there in the center. So I just wanted to save you a little bit of layout time. No point in watching me just sort of draw that stuff out. So that gets you to this point, and I've already annealed the metal, have it centered up on the lathe. As usual, I'm working with 1100 alloy of aluminum, which is nearly pure aluminum, so it's nice and soft. And then I've also annealed it, and you could check out my video on annealing if you're not sure about that whole process. But that then leaves it completely softened, so it spins really well. And again, I'm working with smaller blanks because it's just a lot faster in these kind of demonstration videos to show you. So we'll get that going. With any of these shaped blanks, it's really important to remember that you can't trim the edge. And if you have points like I do on this triangle, you really want to watch the edge. It could certainly even cut through a glove or something like that. So really be mindful of the spinning edge of the piece. And I think we're ready to go. So here we are. And as usual, I will just seat it onto the foot of the chuck. I've already got my tailstock nice and secured, and I just want to get it to seat on there so it won't slip off while we're working. So I'm just working just that shoulder of the chuck, not really working too much else, but I just need to get it spun down enough that when I switch to that larger follower block, I'll be able to get my tool in wherever I need to work. So that's usually just about enough, maybe an 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch, depending on the size of your spinning tools. And then I'll just switch this out really quick. I did get a question about live centers versus, just a regular sort of tailstock center, and I always work with a live center because it cuts down on friction against the piece. And I really like this live center that has that threaded connection so that I make sure that my follower blocks are nice and secure. I mean, you could just wedge it in there, but this really makes for a much better kind of working process. Get that tightened down in there again. And while I'm spinning, the thing that you really want to watch, just like on the square, if you saw that video, is the low point, or the farthest point from these points is where it's going to want to tend to wrinkle or tear. And so as I move outwards of the form, there's not metal all the way around like on a circle. So you really use almost no force at the end. You're just sort of guiding the metal into place. So we'll get going here. And the metal, I've noticed with shaped blanks, has a tendency to sort of spring back on you a lot. So as you're spinning the more solid part of the blank, the outside points will either stay sort of perpendicular to the axis of rotation, or they'll want to start sort of coming back in like that. So that's something to just watch while you're working. You could do that on purpose, certainly, but if you don't want that, you certainly want to keep it from happening. You may hear a little bit of kind of noise, and that's just because the tool is only hitting those 3 points of the triangle. So if you're a wood turner, it's sort of like turning a live edge where you're only hitting wood some of the time. And I like to stop this frequently to check out sort of how the form's developing and watch that I'm not getting any kind of a sort of wrinkle or tear in there. And where there's less and less metal, if you saw the square video, you'll notice that this also stays a flat plane, and the metal doesn't like to curve as much as where it's nearly all solid there towards the base. Just kind of keep working it down, keep checking the form that I'm developing. You can see it's a little bit off, but that could be an interesting part depending on your overall design. And I'm going to keep pushing it to see if any wrinkling or tearing will happen. Sometimes in a demo or something like that, anything that can go wrong will, so we'll see what happens. And I'll usually stop if I do see that starting to evolve. You can see like a little kind of start of a wrinkle there up on top. And it's just something to watch while you're working. You could certainly take it off the lathe and tap it out if you needed to. If it's a much bigger piece, take it off, anneal it again, tap it out. And I'll just kind of keep going with it, see what we end up with here at the end. And I'm using almost no force at the end, just kind of guiding the metal. And rather than really burnish it down to the form, I'm just going to kind of leave it there. And you can see there's a difference there between the spun curvature of the metal and then as you get to the points, and it's really just sort of a flat plane. And again, you could adjust that with hammers off of the lathe, or bend it all the way back over or something, but I'll take that off so you can get a look-see. And then that's one approach, bringing it all the way up. And then that other sample that I had where I left it sort of perpendicular out. So I think that there's just a lot of really interesting design possibilities for having these shaped blanks, and I encourage you to experiment safely on your own, and if you get any good results, certainly let me know and share them. So good luck and have fun. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to hit that subscribe button so that you can hear from me when I post future videos. Thanks for stopping by.